All right. So I'm going to put something on the screen. I'm going to share my screen, and it's got I think 4 questions. I'm not sure. I don't remember anymore. But think about it for a minute, and then we'll start. All right. So, does anybody want to lead us off?
When you say what you're working on, can you clarify that? In terms of direct action, or in terms of
no.
Just woman handle these logs over here so that they don't fall on me again.
If that's what your thing is, like I said, we're going to learn more about each other later. So I'm not too worried about it.
Well, my name is Maren. I'm from the woods in the northern Mid-Hudson Valley, but I now live in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh. And what I'm working on is woman handling these logs so they don't fall over on me again. And I forget the last question. What was the last question?
What do you want to get out of this?
Yeah. More understanding of how direct action will help us win, because we need some wins. I'll take the light out of your eyes now and go back to my logs.
All right. Well, thanks, Maren. I guess I'll jump in. Jim Highland. Who am I? I'm a dad of 4, and I've got a dog too, so keeps me busy. I'm from Grove City, Pennsylvania, and a lot of the work I do is with a local group that has been fighting a landfill for 25 years. We've done other things, but that's kind of our big fight. And we're going to court in April, so things are moving along. But we're suing the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, believe it or not. And what do I hope to get out of this? I also do other things with the Pennsylvania Climate Convergence and so forth. Yeah, I'd like to see us, find our way to a sustained campaign that a broad range of groups all feel they can work together on. I don't know what form it'll take, and I don't think we're going to figure it out all in one weekend, but that we can work towards that. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay, I'm Ellen Gerhardt. I live in Huntington, Pennsylvania, which is pretty much center part of the state. Right now, I'm working on trying to catch up on sleep that I haven't been getting for the past, I don't know how long. And I'm a member of a couple different groups. The group that we had here was Camp White Pine, but also a member of Better Path, and I kind of pop up at different meetings occasionally. What I hope to get out of this is just taking a look at some of the things that we did, what were some of the things in hindsight we could have done better and should have done instead, and just continue pushing forward. I'm done.
Thanks.
I'm Doug Mason. I live near State College, Pennsylvania. I'm chair of the local Sierra Club here and the local Green Party. And I also sit on the Spring Creek Watershed Commission. I guess I'm working on, protecting Spring Creek, but with the Sierra Club, we're doing a lot of work protecting our wetlands down in Huntington not too far from Ellen, and it's called Old Crow. And we're also working on well issues up in northern Pennsylvania. In fact, there's not just northern Pennsylvania. We have some in Center County that are leaking methane pretty badly, abandoned wells. So we're going to be taking a look at those in the near future. What I hope to get out of this, I guess, is further stamina to continue on the path and, get involved in future actions and plan a few here too as well.
Sounds good. Thanks.
If I can go. Yeah, I'm Michael Bagdes-Canning. I live in northern Butler County in Cherry Valley. I am in a whole bunch of fights right now, but the one I'm putting a lot of energy into at the moment is Pennsylvania Action on Climate, which was formed at the intersection of bad climate policy and political corruption. So we're working on politicians. We're trying to be a royal pain in the ass. And what I hope to get out of this is just more knowledge. I need to know how to do stuff.
Are we supposed to just jump in or?
I think that's how we're doing it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. My name is Matt Nemeth. I live in the Pittsburgh area in southwestern Pennsylvania. I think I lost what the
What are you doing now? What's your
what
thing?
am I doing?
Marin's fighting logs.
I'm just
kinda
sitting at
big.
home, but in general, let's see. Well, I was chair of the Green Party of Allegheny County all last year, and my term recently ended. So I took been taking a little bit of a step back, not a break, but relaxing the activism back a little bit. But
I still
am
see you
also,
at stuff.
well, yeah, but I'm not like lead organizing anything right now. So I'm also getting involved in PAC, which Michael was talking about, Pennsylvanians for Action on Climate. And I'm hoping, since a lot of the stuff that March in Harrisburg is doing is more tied to Harrisburg and other areas in Pennsylvania, I'm hoping we can bring it home locally to the Pittsburgh area, Allegheny County. So I'm looking forward to trying to organize actions locally where I live as part of that, and hoping that this reading discussion can help kind of inform that.
I think I can go. I'm Theron. I'm in Pittsburgh. Also in the Green Party, also in DSA, also in March on Harrisburg. Kind of focusing mostly on anti-racism, abolition, and anti-imperialism stuff right now. And what I hope to get out of this is basically learning, because I'm kind of stumbling through things and picking it up as I go along. So to be among people who actually know what they're doing and I can learn from them, that's fantastic.
I
Great.
think that is everyone. Right? No one's been left out.
I think so. So except for your silent partner.
Shaking her head vehemently. She's listening, but she is not going to participate.
Okay.
All right. So if you haven't figured it out yet, this is that book study you've been hearing about, and I'm going to be working with Jim. If you haven't figured that out, and this book study grew out of something that grew out of a conversation between me and Jim. Jim's in Mercer County. I'm in northern Butler County. We're neighbors. We both work with two small groups, and we didn't even know about each other until, I guess, last year. And so we started saying, you know, we should be doing stuff together. We're fighting a common foe. And so we started talking, and then all of a sudden George Lakey fell into our lap. He was supposed to go to Bucknell and he didn't. And he ends up coming to Slippery Rock in the end of this month. But one of the things George suggested was that before he comes, we actually start talking about his book, How We Win. So I'm excited you're here. And if you want to actually learn a whole lot more about How We Win, I would definitely recommend that you come to Slippery Rock on March 30th or 31st, because George obviously wrote the book. I'm excited about this book study because I looked at who was going to be here. This is when I saw the RSVPs, I felt humbled. I mean, my gosh, I know many of you. In fact, I think I know all of you. And I've worked with many of you on a bunch of things. And I'm just really, I think we have an opportunity to have a really important conversation because of the diversity of skill sets that we have here. And one of the themes that comes out in How We Win, and it's not the way George says it, but to me, it really comes across, is that none of us are as smart as all of us. And to build successful campaigns, we have to tap into the strengths that each one of us brings to the table. Now, I taught reading for almost 30 years, and one of the ways to look at reading is as an active conversation between the author and the reader. Now, none of us are going to be having the same conversation because we're all coming with different background knowledge and everything else. So for this book study to be as powerful for all of us as possible, it's going to be really important that each one of us contributes something. This book study will also be more powerful for all of us is if you read the book. Now, we advertise this book study as a Cliff Notes version, which means you don't really have to read the book, but it will become much more powerful if you do, and if you're able to bring your knowledge and expertise to the conversation. There's another thing I want to put on the table, and I've already kind of alluded to it, and I think Jim will echo this. We are not the experts in how we win. There are people who are on this call that have lived, well, in Ellen's case, they've lived in a powerful nonviolent direct action for over 2 years, I think, at least 2 years anyway. All I can say is I've read the book. I worked a little tiny bit with George. I've been involved in a number of direct actions, and some of those direct actions were actually in the context of a campaign. But I'm a learner too. So I'm here to learn from the book, and I'm also here to learn from you. And I'm pretty sure that Jim is coming from the same place. Now, okay, thanks. Yeah. So we're gonna break the book up into parts. Oh, we have someone coming. Your friend, Ellen. Hi, Marla. Welcome. Anyway, we're gonna try and break the book up into some parts. This is not going to be a lecture series, though. Instead, what we're going to do is today, Jim's been really busy. So I'm going to just throw some quotes from the book up on the screen. And what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do with these quotes is have a conversation. And from there, we'll work our way through the entire book. Marla, I want to give you a chance to say hello.
I think I'm unmuted now, am I?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Hello, everybody. Hi, Ellen. My good friend. Hi, Michael. Thank you for letting me join.
Well, I'm glad you're here. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, just so we have some background? Just
Well, right now I'm in Texas and the alarms are going off for a tornado.
Oh.
I'm from Alaska. I used to teach at the university. I'm a substitute teacher in the school district up there, but because of health reasons and all of the winter that they're having, I'm down where they're having summer right now.
and
Take care.
tornadoes up. Yes.
To take care of me. So yeah. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for hopping on this. I hope you'll join us for the rest of the series. So anyway, let's dive into this thing. I'm going to try and share my screen again and get the next quote. Okay, I want to leave it up for a little bit so you can digest it. Now, I guess I can read it too. I don't know if everyone's got the capability. I know Karen doesn't. So the goal of this book is to offer movement building approaches that, oh man, I can't read my own thing.
Now,
That win major changes rather than small reforms. At the same time, campaigns need to involve the many participants who hope that sufficient change can come through a series of limited reforms. So let's kind of react to that. First of all, I do want to say that one of the things that this book talks about is campaigns versus one-offs. We're going to talk more about it later on, but one of the things that could be real important as we go through this is if you have questions about what terms mean or whatever, ask the question. I always tell Karen that Karen and I were classmates before we even really actually met each other. And one of the things that really impressed me about Karen was that she asked the questions that probably 99% of the people in the class were thinking, but wouldn't ask because they were too bashful. Well, Karen wasn't bashful, and I was just really quite an admirer of that skill. So if there are questions as we go through this, please, let's just ask them. I'm going to put that thing back up again. I'm sorry, because I guess asking you to remember that's probably not a good thing. Anyone have any reactions to that?
I think I'm looking forward to major reforms. I mean they're long overdue, but I think one of the things is all these different groups have kind of been scattered, and one's doing one thing, one's doing another, and maybe that's why we haven't been able to get the major reforms. So having a campaign that a lot of folks can work towards. I think we got a better shot at those kind of things.
Having the term reform to me says a change in the way things are going to be done going forward, which is certainly a wonderful goal, but I don't know that it's the only goal, because sometimes you need a change in something that's happening or something that's being done. And so I think there's more there's the word win to me implies more different things than just reforms. You can have a victory that is a plant shutting down, or a plant, a facility improving its behavior, or a politician changing their stance publicly, but that is not a reform, because it doesn't affect that whole industry or that whole governmental body or the rules of government. So this is I don't know what he is meaning by the word reform.
I totally agree with that comment. That was a good comment.
Yeah, I know that in terms of what George Lakey has done, especially with regard to the environment, I mean, one of the things that he helped push through with a lot of other people was getting a bank, I think it was PNC Bank, to stop funding mountaintop removal. So maybe he calls that a reform, but that kind of sounds more like what you were saying, like trying
It's
to
an action. It's a result of actions
yeah,
and pressure, but it's not like I guess it is a reform in that company, but I think of reform as like the way governments do things and the rules under which everybody operates.
Yeah, I mean, I think he means it in a broader sense that, you know, yeah, you want to stop, you want to shut down plants, you want to stop people from putting harmful chemicals into the water. You know, that maybe that doesn't seem like a reform, but I think these campaigns he's talking about can be any of these things. You know, it's more or less the way I've read it is it's getting techniques together so that people, you know, can marshal their resources. You know, getting some real clear demands, finding a target, you know, that can, you know, change things so to fulfill those demands. And then moving tactics forward and increasing the intensity of it so that you can get those reforms. But that could be applied to a whole range of things, from what you call reforms to what you could call actions. A lot of different things, I think.
I think another thing to do is go back and look at actually what he said in that particular quote. And that was, he said, this book's goal is to win major changes rather than small reforms. So I don't think how we win, George, is talking about, you know, little things. He's talking about just redoing the whole thing. Again, I don't know if everyone knows who George Lakey is, but I joked before, he literally wrote the book, but he also wrote another book back in 1963 during the Civil Rights Movement. They were training folks all the time on how to do stuff, but there was not a manual. There was not a set procedure, I guess. They didn't compile what worked and what didn't work. They didn't have like a knowledge base. And what George and his co-author, whose name it's blanking on, I think it's Oppenheimer, what they did was they put together a manual that was then used during like Freedom Summer in 1964 to train the folks who went down to Mississippi. And it was also used as, I think in the book it says, before Dr. King. You know, I mean, before Dr. King shows up, they were training folks on how to do stuff. But what the civil rights movement was looking for wasn't reform. It was looking for a drastic change. I mean, they wanted to redo the entire Jim Crow South. They wanted to get rid of the system of oppression. So I don't know that this book's written for reform. It's written for major change.
But I think too that when it says involve the many participants, that you have to respect various comfort levels. Some people are perfectly comfortable with chaining themselves, you know, to a fence or a door or something. And some people, their comfort level is, okay, I'm willing to write letters to the editor. I'm willing to do, you know, some other things. And you need everybody. You know, you need those people who are willing to write letters. You need those people who are, you know, willing to be more quote unquote active. Everybody has a place. And, you know, you just have to respect that. If somebody is not comfortable doing something, but they have a strength somewhere else, then utilize that strength in that spot.
I think he's also talking about, in that quote, about the notion of incremental change. So working within the system versus tearing the system down.
Mhm.
And how both are valid.
Ellen brought up a good point, and we're going to talk about it later if we have time. I mean, that's one of the things I'm worried about is time. But yeah, absolutely. The idea of nonviolent direct action is not a thing that everybody needs to engage in. And we need to make space, and we need to honor too. I mean, that's another thing that I've run into is that sometimes folks in both directions, actually, sometimes folks who are involved in direct action talk about folks who are doing the lobbying and doing the political stuff, the letters to the editor, as if they are like second-class citizens. And that's absolutely not a valid way to look at this. And we need all people to be pulling in the same direction, and everyone's got to work on their own thing. But again, one of the goals for me, building on what Ellen was talking about, one of the goals for me in this weekend is this not weekend, the March 30, 31 thing, is that people who are doing the lobbying and the politics, the political stuff and the letters to the editor also recognize that folks who are involved in direct action are also doing an important job. And in many ways, they too are an important component of the move for change.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. Some people are afraid to hear anything about direct action because they think it becomes violent or something. I don't know. They get scared if I bring it up. So there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. And this book lays it out very well. Doesn't seem scary at all. it seems doable. That's the nice thing. When people get frustrated, oh, there's nothing we can do. I mean, this book kind of makes it like, no, there's things you can do. You just have to put a little time into it, and here are some ways to help frame that.
Any other reactions to this? Okay, well, let's move on to the next one then, and I'll read this one too. Because a movement's learning curve depends on how healthy its organizational forms and processes are, this book is not only about strategy and tactics, but it's also about what goes on inside the groups that wage the struggle.
I think that that's really accurate because if you have a group working on something and you have conflict within that group, it's just going to end up being chaotic, and it's not going to change anything. It's not going to make any reform at all. But if everybody's working together, it doesn't mean that everybody has to totally agree on the same idea, but there needs to be no conflictual things happening, or the reform won't be successful.
One of the things that I've seen over and over in the last, 12 years, whatever I've been doing this thing, is that oftentimes people don't know how to communicate with each other effectively, and it turns into a major disaster, and the group falls apart because people, again, they just don't know how to communicate well with each other. They don't have the skills to work with other people effectively over the long term. And frankly, again, we're in a very stressful time. A lot of us are feeling stressed for a lot of different reasons. So I can understand why people are stressed, but we need to learn how to work together well.
Yeah, I mean, I know from personal experience when we'd have our group meetings and that sometimes you needed somebody to really be a mediator because you had some very strong personalities and you know, trying to validate everyone's opinion without antagonizing everybody else that was sitting there. It's hard when you've got, I'm gonna say it's sometimes hard when you've got a group of people who are very passionate about you know, whatever the action is or whatever they're working on, and coming from different levels of expertise in that kind of action, or coming, you know, just variation in background, sometimes trying to get the group to mesh into a more cohesive unit is challenging.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, people have strong opinions because this is important stuff, and there's an urgency to get something done. But sometimes, you know, certain folks decide, well, I know the right way, and they want to march forward with it, and other people disagree. So there's got to be a way to, like you say, get someone to mediate that, get everyone a chance to put their view in, and then find some consensus to move forward.
What immediately comes to my mind when I read this quote is, and how it has to do with organizational form and maintaining a healthy organization during the duration of some sort of campaign or activity, has to do with burnout. Essentially, is what I've seen happen to so many organizations. When I was younger and I was in college, I saw it in student organizations. I saw it in the Green Party. I saw it in Sunrise Movement. When a lot of us are in organizations that have a very limited pool of people in them, and because of that, there's a small number of people who are taking on many different roles, many different jobs. And I think something we need to really, really, really work on, and something many of us have failed in the past, including myself, is making sure that we include enough people. We need to work on like having more people in our organization and divvying up the roles that need to be taken on, and also saying no. Knowing when to say no is also something really important, that I've learned personally, just from taking on too many tasks that I couldn't handle, and realizing it's just not worth it. You know, it's not worth the trouble. The work we're doing is important, but it's easy to forget that, you know, our personal health and well-being is also important. So that's just what I think of when I see this.
I just would add that, you know, we're all very passionate and we sometimes get carried away in our passion. So we need to be channeled a little bit sometimes. And our friends, we trust them that they'll guide us in the right directions, I guess.
Next one. Those are the two from the introduction. This is from chapter 1. There we go. Can someone else read that?
A nonviolent
non-
direct action campaign typically makes a demand for one or more specific changes, identifies an opponent or target that can respond, and generates a series of nonviolent tactics that escalate over time.
This is the beginning of the chapter, and basically Lakey is defining what he means by nonviolent direct action, what a campaign should look like. And we're going to talk more about the difference between a campaign and some other stuff. But right now, does this sound like what you've thought of when you thought of nonviolent direct action?
Well, it's defining a campaign more than it's defining the action. So it's not talking about what constitutes nonviolent direct action. It is talking about what constitutes a campaign.
Yeah.
Which it does a very fine job of.
The thing that I guess for a long time, and I'm going to say like 5 or 6 years, that the direct actions the nonviolent direct actions that I participated in were basically one-offs. I mean, we did something, but we didn't follow up. We didn't do anything. We didn't escalate. We did some stuff, but that was it. And I'll give you, for instance, my friend Maggie Henry had an organic farm in Lawrence County, and they put a fracking well in right next to her, and we decided that wasn't good. So we needed to do something, and we did two things at her farm. We had an action camp, and then a few months later, we did a blockade with a giant pig. We shut the Maggie raised pigs, which is why we used the pig. But we shut the well pad down for an entire day. It was very exciting. It meant a whole lot. But that was the end of it. I mean, as far as what went on after that, we never went back to that well pad. We never did anything to escalate. We just did that thing. We got a lot of attention, and that was it. So I guess what Lakey's doing in this little quote here is differentiating between the one-off thing and a campaign. So,
And then there's the question of whether the campaign is successful, which I suppose this book is all about how to make them successful. We did do Over, including me, and then I, separate from Over, did a series of things. Over stands for Ohio Valley Environmental Resistance, which I helped found, but I'm no longer a part of because of some of the things we talked about in the previous slide. And they were overall, it is to make life difficult for the petrochemical industry in the Ohio River Valley, the fracking and the ethane cracker plant, which will be taking ethane from fracking and turning it into polyethylene. And so we did a whole bunch of different actions, and some of them we did more than once. And then they folks had the idea of trying to pressure our county executive. We went from having supervisors years ago to having county executives about 3 people ago. And the current one is very pro-gas and pro-petrochemical, and his name is Fitzgerald, nickname is Frackin' Fitz. And he was the Over at large decided to go and protest outside of his house. And it happened to be on March 14th, and which is High Day and sometimes represents science. And I happened to find him in a recording of an interview or a press conference or something in which in the context of poo-pooing Trump's Pittsburgh and Paris business when he was withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accords, he said, "We believe in science around here." So Fitzgerald said that. And so I pegged on that and did all kinds of things to relate it to science. But then Over wanted to do another house protest, and he's not even home most of the time. And so, and it seemed to me that this should have been part of a sequence, part of a campaign that started with going to his office. And so, and I had said that before the first one, and they said, people go to his office all the time. No, it doesn't do any good. And so I managed to squeeze in between the first house protest and the second house protest, a petition letter, sign-on letter and petition, and then a rally in which we delivered it. So there was a little more continuity because that meant that we were going to his office, and then I felt a little better about the second house protest. But it's, and there was a dialogue there of responses and responses to responses, but it ultimately didn't get anywhere. And that may be because it wasn't persisted with. But if the goal was to change his opinion and get him to change his public stand, that did not happen. So it was a nonviolent direct action campaign that made a demand for one or more specific changes. It had a target and it had a series of actions, but it still wasn't successful. So it wasn't the key to winning, but now he's term limited and he'll be gone. So hopefully we'll have a better person.
Yeah, I think one of the go ahead, I'm sorry.
I hope I didn't take up too much time sharing that story, but that was an example of a campaign in this definition. It didn't so much escalate as it changed, but it kept the pressure on for a while and then kind of gave up or went to other things or whatever. So
and that's pretty much what Lakey talks about, is that in order to be successful, a nonviolent direct action campaign has to be persistent as hell. You can't just do something a couple times and say, oh, that didn't work, or even 5 or 6 times it didn't work. You need to find out, if it didn't work, if you didn't get any kind of result, then you need to go back to the drawing board. But it's, the civil rights movement didn't happen, overnight. It didn't take a few lunch counter sit-ins. It didn't take a few marches across the William Pettus Bridge. It took lots and lots of things over a period of many, many years. So yeah, good point, Maren. Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the civil rights movement, there were times where things just didn't work out. The Albany protests were a bit of a disappointment, I guess, and they had to regroup. And I think it was then that they decided, well, we're going to Birmingham. And the President Kennedy was like, no, don't do that. And they're like, no, that's where we're going. And so it was a reevaluation.
Anyone else with this? If not, I'm going to move to the next one because it actually kind of addresses the what you were talking about, Maren, sort of. Someone else want to handle that one?
Protests are well known and popular. The trouble is, when I look back on the one-off protests I've joined over the years, I don't remember a single one that changed the policy we were protesting.
And I remember, I'm going to pop in here just because I was thinking about that. I rode my bike today and I was thinking about this. Karen and I went to New York City for this huge People's Climate
March
thing. Yeah. I mean, and I remember being blown away at how many people were there. And I thought, oh, this is going to change everything. And then fast forward, I think it was probably next year or something like that. We were in DC for the Women's March. And again, I remember looking and thinking, holy shit, look at all these people. This is going to change the conversation around women and that. And again, they were one-offs, and I don't remember if anything really valuable came out of either one of those things. I mean, I know the Women's March kind of went on, but I don't think it went on with the kind of power that we saw that first time. It just kind of fizzled.
Well, there were issues with it within the movement related to intersectionality and stuff. It's like Pussy Hat was taken to be a white woman's thing, and so there was some sintering over that kind of thing. But I agree, and I mean the same thing when there's a big disaster. It's like, is this train derailment really going to make the rules all change so that all the hazardous trains are going to have the better brakes and all that stuff? Probably not. Is this mass shooting going to be the one that makes the gun laws go in? And hasn't so far. Is this well blowout or pipeline explosion going to mean that fracking is going to stop or even pause? No, apparently not. There's so
I think
much.
pointing to
I think it's 'cause
disasters,
of
though, is
money.
probably not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the response to those disasters.
Right. What I'm saying
the
is
movement mobilize.
the transcendence of events, whether it's a disaster or a giant protest.
Right.
It's
Right.
like there's so many other interests, mostly having to do with money for the people in power, or money that influences the people in power, or some combination of those, that gets in the way, that has a vested interest in keeping things the way they are.
I think kind of one thing I noticed with even very large one-off protests, and this goes back to people keeping things when they are, is in these larger coalitions, they get co-opted. I mean, I don't know too much about the National Women's March, but like, I know that the local Pittsburgh chapter of the Women's March, the organizer, as soon as Kamala Harris was, running for president and then made vice president, I don't know, I guess she stopped caring because like, oh, we have a woman there and she's a Black woman, so I guess women are okay now. Or like what happened with the organized group Black Lives Matter that tried to co-opt the Black Lives Matter protests. They got money and enriched themselves, but meanwhile the movement has been co-opted and therefore in some sort of popular opinion has been delegitimized. So I think also like part of that is the co-opting, and that they didn't have really specific focus, like an ask or a specific policy they want to change. It's just like, let's get together and protest. And then because they were disorganized, that can happen.
That was one of the things that George talks about in the book. Again, I recommend you read it. But and Jim already alluded to this, but yep, exactly. One of the things that one of the amazing actions that George was part of, he formed a group, co-founded a group called Earthquaker Action Team. Earthquaker Action Team was a small little group. They identified a target. It was PNC Bank, and then they made life miserable for PNC Bank for a long time. They went in and they disrupted the goings on at the bank. It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't just. What happened was it was like that little group, Earthquaker Action Team, started things that made people aware that PNC was getting uncomfortable, and so other people joined them, and they also had a plan, and they went into the banks, and pretty soon it was happening, as George told me yesterday, or not yesterday, a few days ago. 13 states, PNC was getting disrupted, and it just made a decision that, you know what, this isn't good for business, and they got out of financing mountaintop removal. So, yeah, this is exactly what you were saying, Karen.
Yeah,
Specific demand and then action.
Yeah, one of the quotes that was in the book too was about protests as being more of a way to vent, and it's kind of like, okay, you get there, you get, it off your chest and you've made your statement and now we can go home. It makes you feel good at the moment, but it doesn't really change anything. And then when he's talking about the campaigns, the point isn't to really make yourself feel better. It's to make the other person feel more uncomfortable, and to do that, you have to keep up the pressure. You have to, they have to know that you're going to outlast them. And, that a lot of what happens is the opponent, whoever it is, counts on being there longer than the people who are, protesting. It's like, we'll just wait them out. There'll be a mess for a while and then they'll just go away and everything will be fine. And the only way that you're going to get anything is just keep it up. It may not be spectacular, like protests can be very spectacular, but it's just the constant kind of irritation, the proverbial burr under the saddle kind of thing, that eventually gets things done.
Yeah, I encountered an account of this in the book, The Legacy of Luna. It's about Julia Butterfly Hill, the woman who, she ended up spending over 2 years in a redwood tree to stop the clear cutting in a certain part of Northern California. But when she first went out there, she wanted to get involved and help out, and they kept telling her, no, we don't need you. And finally they said, well, there's a protest down in our a little south of here. Go down and see what you think of that. It was in Eureka, I guess. And so she went down and she said, yeah, people, one group was chanting one thing, another was chanting another, and they were talking about things. And then when it was all over, they just went home and nothing really got done, and it was disappointing. But she was persistent. I mean, she was like, no, I'm going to find somebody, who gives me something to do. And, eventually, she ends up sitting in a tree and she outlasted everybody, just amazing. Now that's one person, but she had help from other people, obviously, to do that. You can't live in a tree without some food and water. So, but I mean, they outlasted him. Now it took years though. It took 2 years really. So these kind of things, if you're expecting a few months and you're going to get your result, it might not be. I mean, didn't George's mountaintop removal thing take, I don't know, was it 5 years? I can't remember.
7. Yeah.
5 to 7. So that's a fairly long haul there, but you have to kind of be committed to that. And then you have to get, a lot of people in the group committed to it as well. Just, don't think this is going to be over quick, and let's have a good plan and let's keep finding ways to escalate, and make sure we're doing something that is escalating. So a lot of fine tuning that has to be done through the whole thing.
I'm looking at the clock. I don't want to go over an hour, and we're like 2 minutes in. 2 minutes away, I mean. But yeah, so this whole thing, and just Jim, just so you're aware, I don't know if you know this, but Ellen can tell you a thing or two about tree sits. That's basically what Camp White Pine was.
Wow.
We'll have to talk 2 year more. Direct action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still, well, I guess it's over now, huh? Is that what you said?
Pretty much. At least we kind of hit our objectives that at least we've put DEP and ETP at a little bit more of an adversarial situation. So hopefully that will bear some fruit there.
So, I mean, what happened to Camp White Pine was a good example of what persistence is. I mean, it was a pretty much nonstop tree sit for how long, Ellen? I keep saying 2 years, but
it was pretty close to that. Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah.
A very long time.
Yeah. Let me clarify. I did not sit in any trees. I was ground support. So.
Well, which again brings up the other point that there's way more than the actual people in the trees. There's way more than the people that chain themselves to stuff. There's way more than people that go sit in. You need people at all levels. But that's a good point. Okay, so anyway, what I would appreciate is maybe some feedback. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. Maybe in the next few days, drop me a line, let me know. Please read the book so we can actually have a conversation. Yeah, I hope to see everybody
Do
next
you
week.
want to specify a chunk of the, I mean, I thought you did a great job bringing out some really key quotes. Do you want to specify a range of the book that people should try to do by such and such a time? I mean, that could-
Jim and Ellen were both suggesting chapter 4, right up to chapter 4. Was that it?
I mean, I think the original idea, which doesn't really matter, but it was to try to get to the end of chapter 4 today. Well, of course we didn't do that, but that's okay. There's 5 parts to the book, and I thought, well, if we did part 1 week, part 2 another, part 3, part 4, we'd get through most of the book. But the thing is not just to get through the book, though. We need to have good conversations and understand each other, and so. Maybe for next time, we don't want to force ourselves to try to get to the end of the, I forget what chapter it is, but
part 9.
Yeah, but I mean, there's maybe things that if you find something in the first section, the first 4 chapters that you say, wow, I want to talk about this a little bit. Maybe send an email to one of us, and we can kind of hop and skip through it. Places that you find, hey, this is really important, or hey, I really don't understand what he means here, and we can talk about it and try to figure it out, and we'll see how far we get. In the end of the day, we'll probably be referring back to this book and other books as we move a campaign forward. But we want to move through it at the right pace. So
Could you give me the full name of the book?
yeah, the full name is How We Win: A Guide to Nonviolent Direct Action Campaigning. And I can maybe type it in the chat if that would be better.
I got it.
There we go. There we go.
It's the teacher in me.
Yes, no, that's good. And I think Michael's going to be getting a big box of books in the mail to have at the gathering that we're having at the end of March. But if you can get it before that, that's even better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he
I
came.
I don't know that you'll be here coming from Texas to our gathering, but yeah.
I'm gonna try as much as I can to be on.
Good.
Okay, great.
I mean, I didn't just pop on for one night, so.
Oh yeah, okay, good. I'm glad that. But what I meant is we're going to have this campfire
In-person
gathering
thing.
in March in Slippery Rock. So that's a heck of a commute for someone from even from someone from Huntington, but from Texas. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have relatives that are closer. So,
Oh, that's what you're going to, Ellen.
yeah.
That's what you were talking about. Okay.
So anyway,
Yeah,
yeah, I love what Jim just said. If you read through, and if you don't read through, that's okay too. But if you read through and you find things that are particularly you think you want to have a conversation about, yeah, drop me a line. Tell me what it is, and we'll I'll send it out in our next communication you get from me. And if I put my email in the chat, if you don't already have it, yeah, if you want to communicate about anything, and I think if you registered, you also got my phone number. So if you want to have a conversation, I'm available. I'm an old retired guy, so I got time. I'll hang out for a bit, but that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, great.
Yeah, thank you all for being here, and tell other folks if they want to get involved with this. It'll be Thursdays, starting at 7. All the Thursdays in March, and then the last Thursday in March is when we're going to be meeting in person at Slippery Rock, and carrying these conversations forward, and hopefully, getting the beginnings of plans for a regional campaign.
Yeah, he did come to Pittsburgh about 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And did a book talk at a local radical bookstore, and he also did a workshop that I was not able to make it to, but that's why I have his book. And I've
But just
skimmed it,
to
but I haven't read it.
to give a little tease, not only do we have George lined up, we also have Veronica Coptis. I know many of you know Veronica from Center for Coalfield Justice. She's going to be our other presenter. And she is, if you don't know her, she's amazing. She's a little bit younger than George. George is 85. So Veronica's, I think, probably still in her 30s. But yeah, different perspective, but a frontline fighter. So yeah, if you want to come to that, please do. That'd be great.
Yeah, we're still working out if we're going to be able to find someone to video some of that and maybe stream it online so that people who are from Texas or Alaska can tune in. So I'm going to try to get a hold of some students from the film department at Slippery Rock and see if they want to help us out with that. I know there's people there who do that, so just got to work it out.
Okay.
Great.
And I'll hang out, but no one else has to.
Thank you all for coming, though. Take care.